nice spot out here, isn't it?
Yeah.
So today I wanted to tell you a story about something I've gone through that to me was really tragic, and I want to be able to share, the experience, and also, that it's okay to get over this sort of stuff and be able to get on with your life and try and live a fulfilled life. Because when you think about it, we only have one chance at living, and we have to try and make it the best that we can. So I wanted this opportunity to share a story and to give some tools, hopefully on some of my opinions and some tools on what I think are a really good way to live well. Well, my story, is about, I lived with someone, that was my partner for over 20 years, and suffered from depression and focused on death a lot, and it became his life. So for me, I ended up, after a few attempts at my partner's suicide and everything, and many years, I think it was well over 10 years of talking only about wanting to die, that I had to make a choice for myself of what I could really live with, and it was very different to what I was focusing on in life, because I felt that I couldn't help anymore, and I think, living with someone, that only talks about death all the time, that it does take its toll, and it was taking its toll on me and my health. So when I could no longer, put up or deal with another, an overdose and thinking, that he was going to die, that I decided to end our relationship, as well as a lot of other stuff that was going on in regards to, side effects of medication, and I'll talk about medication a little bit, about what side effects can happen with medication, and that doesn't only affect the person that is taking the medication, but it affects a lot of other people as well. And to me, it was having a massive impact on my health, where I was starting to become unwell. So I had to make a choice that I had to end this relationship with the person I loved the most in the world, and really wanted to be with for the rest of my life. But for me to protect myself and my own health, I had to make a choice to to end that relationship, even though I didn't want to. I wanted to be in that relationship forever, but for me it wasn't healthy, and I could no longer be in it. So I had to make the choice to leave, and I suppose, when there was one night where there was this attempted suicide, overdose and everything, and to me it was like a death again, because I had been through those experiences so many times, and I just couldn't deal with it myself anymore. I was emotionally stuffed, so I said that I don't want to do this anymore, and that was actually the day after. So
And what happened when you made that choice to end the relationship?
I called at the beginning of the end, because
Why is that?
there was, for me, there was massive consequences of making that decision. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally taking responsibility for me, and I couldn't help it that he couldn't take responsibility for him, because he had choices that you can live or you can die, and what you focus on. If you keep focusing on a particular thing, that that's either going to be that's what you're going to have in your life, and our focuses were very different. And I just felt that making that decision gave me my opportunity to live, and then it was his choice then to do what he wanted to do with his life.
And what choice did he make?
I'll tell the story about the choice that he made. Message today to be about, you don't have to be a victim of things that happen to you, that you can make a choice to live a really good, happy, fulfilled life, but you have to focus purely on that. And some of the things I'll talk about will cover that. But today marks the first anniversary of the worst day of my life, which what I call the worst day of my life. I already had a few of those in my 40 years, but this one wasn't a normal day. Earlier in the morning, like I went riding horses and come home and fed my animals, my horses and dogs, and got myself off to work and everything, and I was there for a while, and I caught up with a work colleague who was also a really good friend of mine, and we caught up about me catching up with someone that was a most important person to me in my life. I caught up with him the day before. So basically I was saying the events of the day before, and it was all fine, like everything was sort of cool, and then it got really busy, so I was attending to other stuff in the office, and then a first text message come through from my ex-partner, and I'll just quickly say that we did become exes quite a few months before and everything, but we'd only gone our separate ways 2 weeks before to start our lives separately and everything seemed to be pretty good with all that. So the first text message come through, and it was one that had suicide written all over it, and my heart just sank. And the text message basically said, forgive me, my beautiful man, love you forever, make me a promise that you will always remember me for the person I am within, and not this wreck of a person who you grew to dislike, that made you think you had to move on without me. I truly and deeply love you like gold and beyond. You gave me my guiding light for as long as I can remember. I'm feeling really peaceful at the moment and channeling from another dimension full of love and acceptance. And then another text message was asking me to thank about a few of our really special friends for their love and acceptance. And then I thought about our hours and everything the day before, and how the laughing and the crying and the joking and the love and the heartbreak yet excitement when we talked about our futures, and then seeing him driving out the driveway waving to me as I stood waving goodbye to him until I would see him again probably through the week or something. So as you can imagine, my day changed after getting this text message, and my biggest fear I stressed out about for so many years, I thought may be here. It was the day that I dreaded for many years, and the day I desperately never ever wanted anything to have to deal with again. I called him and he told me he was at the beach and that he was having a chill out day, and that he just wanted to be left alone, and he needed time to himself and all that sort of thing. And so I then called his family and said to one of his siblings that I got this text message, and I'd also called him on the phone. Well, I called him on the phone, of course. That's when he told me he was at the beach, and I told them about this conversation and text message and said, you need to go and look for your brother, because I think today might be the day. And it was a very short conversation, and then I thought afterwards I really need to go and report this to the police, because I no longer had the emotional strength or anything to deal with going through this again, because I'd been through it plenty of other times, and I just couldn't do it again. And I thought, by us becoming separated, I was removing myself in a way from having to go through this situation again. Because every other time it just gutted me for weeks. I mean, the time that he did it, 2.5 years before, just made me physically sick and ill for months, and it took me ages to get over it, and it was just so devastating. So I went and reported it to the police, and I don't know how I drove back to work, because it was only just up the street, and my friend seen me, and we went into my manager's office, and I was crying hysterically and basically saying what was going on and what I thought might have been transpiring. And I didn't want to go home, because I didn't want to be at home by myself, and I didn't want to stress my family out about it and everything either. So I decided to stay at work, and my boss suggested that I go for a walk and everything, and try and get myself together, and just see if I could, going for a walk and relaxing a bit, if it would settle me down. So I did that. So then I got, I think, another message or something, so I kept trying to ring him, and finally he answered the phone, and I said, you know, what are you doing? And he said that he was just at the beach, and you know, we were both crying, and he was saying, I can't believe you don't love me anymore. And I told him that I did love him, and he said that he can just never ever forgive himself for what he did to us and what he did to me and everything. And I said to him, well, you know, there's two of us in a relationship, you know, and we'd been through this the day before. I thought we had it all resolved, and you know, I told him I loved him back. And you know, I was sitting on the bench, the picnic table at work, and I had one person see me crying, and they come over, and within minutes, like, you know, there was about 10 or so people standing around me just giving me lots of love and support and saying that I'd done the right thing, and he ended up hanging up on me, and they were just, you know, telling me that I'd done the right thing. I couldn't do much else, and I can't go driving all around the countryside like I have in the past because it could be somewhere different, and didn't know where it would be, but he did say he was at the beach. And so I think the police called me and told me that they couldn't find him at the beach, and I didn't really hear from anyone else again. And I think you know, I've said a few times I'm a bit of a comfort eater, so I thought, and I hadn't had anything to eat all that day, and I was starting to feel really, really weak and sicker than what I already was. And so I went over to the bakery to grab something to eat, and you know, as I walked out the door of the bakery, it was at 1:09. I can still see the text message, and it just said "love you." So I quickly rang his number, and it answered nearly straight away, and all I could hear was this gurgling sound, and it just sounded really, really awful. And I thought, oh, why are you messing with me? Like, you know, why are you making these sounds, and why are you trying to scare me? And I just felt all that and thought it, and I just said, I love you too, and the sound just continued, and I hung up because I didn't want to hear it, because I didn't want him to be messing with me, making out he was doing something like that. And so I went back across to work, and I spoke with my friend, and said to her, you know, what if he's at home? Like, what if he's at home? Like, I need to go home. And I pretty well had myself pretty well together then, and I said to her, I'm fine to drive, like, I'm fine to go home, can I go? Because she also was given the authority to let me leave. And so, like, you know, a 15-minute drive, and I'm driving, and I try not to speed or anything, and you know, I pulled up into my driveway, and I know I just swore straight away, thinking, I just swore, like, thank God, you know, he's not here, like, but, you know, of course there were swear words, and I just thought, you know, thank God he's not here. So I drove up and parked in front of the garage and everything, and I went inside, and I thought, well, all I can do is really stay here until I hear something from his family, and hopefully they'll bring me and let me know, or whatever. And so I walked inside, and the first thing I noticed was 2 letters sitting on my kitchen bench, and my heart just sank again. And I quickly rang his mother and said, oh my God, there's 2 letters here on my bench. And she said, open them, because they might tell us where he is. And so I only opened mine, and I didn't need to open the other one, because mine told me sort of straight away where he was. And you know, it said, dear Greg, please forgive me for doing this and for doing it here. I nearly died. Like, I just couldn't believe it. I ran into the bedroom, and thinking that he may have been in the house, and I ran in the bedroom, he wasn't there, but I noticed on my pillow, I quickly grabbed it, was the last Christmas card that he gave me, you know, with the note that he always said in it, you know, that he loved me, and love you to the moon and back. And I just ran straight outside. As I was running, you know, the distance between the bedroom and the back door, I remember that I didn't see the dogs, because the dogs always, you know, greet me at the back door. Greet me at the door, you know, when we come in, and they always come out to the car. And but I didn't see the dogs, and I ran out the door, and as soon as the door slammed, 4 of the 5 dogs come running from out of the shed out the back, where I keep all my hay and horse equipment and everything. And you know, I just ran out. But as I was running out, I could see all my horses, well, about 7 or 8 of the horses or something, all lined up against the fence, and they were all just looking into the shed. And so I just kept running, and I ran through the gate, and I could see the back of his car. So he had driven around through the paddock and drove into my shed, and I just ran and kept screaming his name, and then I seen him, and he looked like he was standing on the ladder, but he had, you know, the rope around his neck and everything, and I just kept screaming his name, thinking, no, don't do it. But as I got closer, I realised that he was already dead, and his feet actually weren't touching the ladder, so he wasn't standing on the ladder, his feet were just missing the ladder, and I was just, oh my God, that devastation. I just could not stop screaming, and I quickly ran up to him, and I didn't want to touch him or anything, and I could just see, you know, that he was gone, and just had, when I sort of stopped screaming and everything, I just looked at him. He just had this amazing look of peace on his face, and, you know, there was no more depression and no more anger and no more sadness. He just looked like he was asleep and just really, really peaceful. And later on, when I remembered that, you know, that also helped me a fair bit, but it was quite awful. It was, I mean, beyond awful. I mean, you could imagine it was just the worst thing in the world that you could ever find, is the person that you love the most that was, and he was dead. So I quickly called his family, and I called the police. They knew who it was, even through my screaming and everything, and I rang my sister and said, can you please come around to my house? And I told her that he was dead, and that he'd hung himself in my shed, and he was gone. And my sister freaked out and said she couldn't come, so I quickly rang my other friend that I was riding the horses and everything for, and said, and I just remember saying to her, can you please come and see my shed? And his family is on his way, and I don't want to be here on my own when they come, because some of them, I don't know, it doesn't really matter what the situation was, but so in that time I'm still like screaming like a madman, and, you know, I know my boss rang me, another lady from work rang me to see if I was alright, and I had to tell her that he was gone, and oh man, it was so awful. And then, you know, all at once, sort of, you know, the police turned up, my friend turned up that I rang her, and she came, and my sister and my mum drove in as well, and that's when my friend realised that he must have, I never told her that he was dead, but she knew, like we'd have talked about it many times, and she knew that when the police were driving in and everything, what happened. And my sister and my mum were there, and my sister said, oh, I'm so sorry. I said I couldn't come, but just freaked us out, but we couldn't not come, and, you know, she was there for me, and they were there for me, and the policeman went out into the shed to see where he was, and in that time his family turned up, and I just said he's out in the shed. His mother didn't go out, but his brother did, and so, you know, more police turned up and everything, and the ambulance turned up, and, you know, the whole thing sort of, I don't know, I didn't know if I was coming or going, but his family only stayed there for about 20 minutes or half an hour or something, just enough time to give the police details on all, but I mean I knew his date of birth and everything, so I had to supply them all, with all that, and then they said there's nothing left for us here now, and we're going, and they left. And so basically, you know, my friends, you know, and my family, and that we were left, you know, with him in the shed with the police and all that sort of stuff. And you know, I had to ring a few people and say that he had died, and my friend from work, she rang me to see if everything was okay, and I had to tell her that he died. And it was just so awful. But all these people, like my very good friends from work, they all turned up, and like you turned up, and heaps of friends turned up. You know, everyone was just so supportive and loving. I'm so grateful for all these extraordinary people in my life, because, you know, just, you know, showing people that you care and all that sort of thing, it does make a difference. And, you know, they were all there, they all had my back, and you know when you've got that, it's just the most special thing that you can ever have. Well, I found out later that he had taken a whole bottle of well, he drank a half a bottle of scotch, pure scotch, and he had overdosed on antidepressants and everything, and that must have made it easier for him to take action and do what he needed to do for himself. And I just thought about that desperation and the lack of choices at those last moments, and what a devastating thought it must have been for him, or if he really did feel free and everything as he climbed that ladder, and sending me that last text message saying I love you. And because I also had to sort out in my mind as well what all these text messages meant, and then I remembered his letter. So as we were sort of sitting there and everything with my friends and everything, I remembered the letter and went back to the letter, and the letter said, dearest Greg, please forgive me for doing this and for doing it here. Losing you is more than I can bear. Thank you for the time we did spend together happy. I tried to always think of them instead of the bad. If there is an afterlife and memories are able to be carried, mine will be full of memories of us happy together. Take care of yourself, my dear, sweet, awesome Greggy. Love you to the moon and back, my love. Forever, your, and his name. P.S. I wanted to go in familiar surrounds and where I was most happy in my life. Don't hate me for that. So, as you can imagine, I don't know if I've already said, but I felt my life completely changed that afternoon, and, he never left, for about 7 hours later, until he was taken away. So, it was my friends and family that were there for that whole time, and his little dog, who was about 15 or 16 years old, stayed with him that whole time out in the shed, and the police did say the old dog is still out in the shed with him, and that old dog followed him all the way to the car that took him away and never left him all that time. And I just think, that's, people talk about dogs and their relationships with their people and everything. I mean, that was just absolutely extraordinary. So then it became like, there was his funeral and everything. I wrote his eulogy because, I knew the most about him in his life and what he'd been through and all his story and everything. And I sort of think of the years we shared together, the mornings, the love, the excitement, and the connection we always had, the connection through the day, and I was always trying to make sure that he was having a good day instead of a bad day. The evenings, and we did celebrate life together a lot. I sort of wrote some stuff on Facebook and everything about him, like on his birthday, that numbers no matter where you are, and you're young and you're youthful, and keep sharing your spiritual love, and that you were very loved, and just keep sharing around all this amazing stuff that you always shared. Hopefully you can do that in death. And a few days later, I was able to go to a psychic, and the psychic said to me, the first thing she said, when I'd never met her before or anything, and she said, she asked, she said, oh, you've lost someone, and I just said his name, and she said, oh, he's just saying he's so sorry, and that he's so sorry to you, and he's loving where he is, and he is staying with you, and he's saying, you and him had the most extraordinary connection, and he'll always be with you. And he'll always come through to you, and he's your guardian angel, and how lucky I am, because many people don't know who their guardian angel is, but I do. But I thought constantly how I was never prepared for this. How on earth was I ever going to cope without him in my life? He's been there for 20 years. Did he have to get back to me that much that he had to take himself right away? And you go through all the what ifs and what else's, and why didn't I, if only, I should have, but and all these whys. But then, hey, this was not about me, it was about him and what he needed to do for himself. So and then I just remember about choices, and he focused on this for many years, and all the times that he told me for over 12 years that he wanted to die, and it was his choice to die, and I have to have a choice for me now, and I have to have a choice for me now whether I want to live or if I want to die. So I could do the same as him, because they do say, like, after people commit suicide, sometimes people close to them think about doing the same thing, and You know, so I had to, you know, think about what I wanted for me, and I didn't want to have to do the same thing that he did, and I want to live a really good life and hopefully help other people, you know, to be able to live really fulfilled good lives as well. So